Hello again everybody, RocketPoweredApe here, bringing you another Space Engineers update video, and do we ever have a good one today. I'd like to start off by taking a look at some new features of the rotors. Now you might be wondering, why do I have these three rotors that are looking pretty much identical all in a row here? And the answer is, well, they are identical, but they're all set slightly differently. And if we can take a look here, you can see that this rotor is sitting higher than this block. This rotor's about level. And this rotor's lower. And that's because you can now adjust the height of the rotors. If you go into the control panel, it's right here. Where'd those rotors go? Doesn't really matter what rotor I use. Yeah, if you come right down here, you see this new option called rotor displacement. And adjusting this will adjust the height of the rotor. Now, one thing to keep in mind with these things is that they're glitched right now. You need to set the height of the rotor, go out of the map, and then come back in for it to take effect. So if you're building anything that requires the rotors to be at a specific height, just keep that in mind for now until it's patched. Now the next thing I'd like to talk about is a small change that's been made to batteries. And if we come over here to this control panel, we can take a look at it. And here it is right here, this new option called semi-auto. And what this does is, well, exactly what it says on the screen right now. If you check this, your battery will automatically charge to maximum, and then once it hits maximum, it will switch to discharging energy, and then once it hits its minimum, it will switch again to start outputting energy. Now this is really cool because you could have, like, say, a whole bank of batteries, and once you have enough of them, you won't need to worry about babysitting your batteries. They'll just run around on an endless cycle on their own. Now another minor change that's been made is to the factions. Now if you look right here, we see a new option called Accept Anyone, and if this is checked, if somebody wants to join your faction when you're on a server, you don't need to have a faction officer go in and accept the request. They can just straight up join, which is a good thing if you have, say, a general faction on a server that, say, the newcomers will join, or if you just don't actually care who joins your faction. Now, the next change they've made is another thing that's faction related. Say somebody broke into your ship or your station and was hacking into, say, a console or a reactor or a door. If you have an antenna within 200 meters of the thing that's being hacked and somebody's trying to break through it, it will show up on your radar that somebody is trying to hack into the system. Now let's move on to the real meat of the update. And I'm sure many of you have already guessed what that is, just based on what I'm looking at right now. And the meat of this update is really cool. It's pistons and door blocks. Now, if you wanted to build a piston before, you'd have to have something like this. Now, this is fine and all, but the problem with this is that it takes up a lot of space. Like, a lot of space. If you wanted to hide something like this, your ship or your station would have this big, bulky section on it that would look something like this. And you know what? That just doesn't do. So, let's just fly over here and take a look. You can see that they've added in official pistons, and these are much less bulky. They take up way less room. And not only that, but yes, they can indeed be stacked up on top of each other, like so. Though, one thing to keep in mind if you're going to be stacking pistons is to keep the speed under 1 meter per second. Because right now, if you have a pair of stacked pistons that move at over 1 meter per second, they'll freak out and everything will just break. So, couple minor glitches with this patch, but, well, what can you do? It's alpha. Alright, so the next thing I'd like to talk about is what is my second favorite part of this patch. Ta-da! We have official door blocks now! Yay! So now you can build your own giant blast doors without having to fiddle for hours and hours on end. They're still a bit fiddly at the moment, but what can you do? It's an alpha build. It'll get fixed eventually. And I'll go into the one or two admittedly very minor problems that these doors have in a moment, but for now, let's just take a look at these guys working. Alright, so go in here. Let's see, rotor door, sliding door. Let's reverse. Let's check out the rotor door first. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And what's more, unlike the other doors that you'd maybe build before, these sit absolutely flush with their door frames, so there's no real risk of messing up a bit when you build them and leaving little gaps that, say, an enemy can sneak through if he's trying to get into your base. Let's check out this other one. Sliding door. Reverse. Oh yeah, look at that. Perfectly smooth, too. Awesome. Now before I move on to my favorite part of this patch, there's just a couple more things I'd like to talk about. First off, yes, both the pistons and the blast door blocks do indeed come in small and large ship variants. So, whatever insane thing you're building in space, you can now put a door on it. Much easier than you could before, at any rate. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is not a glitch so much as a couple small things to be aware of when you're building things like this, whether it be a door or an elevator or whatever. And that is the positioning of the doors themselves. Now, I find that for rotary doors like this one, the best setting to use is -6.5, which puts the door right in the middle of its frame, like so. And the second thing I'd like to talk about, we'll need to come right over here for, is the sliding doors. Now, by default, the pistons extend out to 10 meters. But if you leave them at their default, when the door closes, the leading edge of the door will smack into the frame and damage it. So you just need to turn it down by a little bit, not very much. I find 9.8 is perfect. Now, one more thing about pistons before we move on to my favorite part of the patch. Pistons can act as conveyor tubes, which makes creating extendable conveyors a lot easier than it used to be in the past. So, if we just click on this control panel here, and where did that thing go? Extendable connector, rotor door, demo piston. I guess I didn't set up a shortcut for it. Okay, where'd you go, you little bugger? Rotor, door rotor exposed, demo rotor. Connector cover, there it is. Alright, so we reverse that. And the cover to the connector opens up nice and smoothly, like so. Wait till it's all the way open. And then we come back over here and extend the connector. Now, this brings me to the final glitch that I mentioned before. One thing that I tried to do with this is have the connector attached to a pair of pistons that were stacked one on top of the other. And, well, the reason that I would do this should be pretty obvious, what with the trundlebug sitting right there. My intent was to have the pistons and the connector come out, grab onto the back of the ship, and then pull it back into a little hangar bay. Now, I'm not abandoning this idea by any stretch of the imagination, but I won't be using it anytime soon because if you do this, as the pistons extend or retract, whatever's connected to them will just freak out like crazy and just slingshot off into space. So yeah, if you want to build a little extendable grabby thing for your ships, it's not so much that it's a bad idea, just hold off on doing it until it's patched out. But yeah, even without being able to do that, this is pretty cool because extendable connectors. And now finally, for my personal favorite part of the patch, a new option has been added to thrusters that lets you toggle them on and off. Now, there's lots of applications for this, but the most obvious and most fun one is making your own ballistic missiles that do not rely on gravity cubes to get going. So without further ado, let's blow up those targets. So I just come down here to this reactor. You could also do this with a battery, but I just found using the reactor was easier. So, small thruster. Now here's the new option right here, labeled Thrust Override, and once again, this looks exactly like what it is. It's a slider that can set the amount of thrust you want for your ship. Boom! Goodbye, target. That was really cool. Let's blow up the other two. Roll panel. Small thruster. Woo! And away it goes! Kaboom! One more time. One more time. And kaboom! I love it. Now, obviously, ballistic missiles aren't the only application for this. You could set, say, a specific acceleration rate for your ship so that if people were walking around inside it while it was accelerating, they wouldn't get, tossed around everywhere like they usually would. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.